Behold, the mighty Ampsandsound's Bigger Ben. This thing is just an island of iron. Just look at all these massively beefy transformers. This is a hybrid headphone and speaker tube amp. I think you could say probably its focus is headphones, like much of Ampsandsound stuff, but I don't know, maybe that's unfair. Anyway, out the back, speaker taps and your single-ended RCA inputs in, power, fuse. Here's a cool thing. This guy's got 5 separate speaker taps from high Z to low Z. So you've got 16, 32, 100 ohm, and that covers like just a ton of headphones. Volume knob, very nice pot. I don't know what it is, but it's super smooth. And then your tube complement. So you've got your 2 power tubes, your stereo power tubes. These are KT88s. I'll pop those guys in there. Nicer to look at shiny tubes than an empty amp. So pop those guys in there. Hello, friend. And then over here, tube rectified with the popular 5U4G or GB or 5A4, letters and numbers. You've seen, I think, maybe in the Taboo video, maybe some of the ones I talked about, how much I think it's important to get tube rectification so you can really sort of dial in that sound signature you're looking for. And then this is kind of a new one for me. Instead of like a 6SN7, this is a 6SL7, which is a tube that I was not super familiar with. There are some new production or reproduction options. This is the JJ Electronics. But there's also some cool older stuff to get into as well. Not as many things as like a 6SN7 or 6922 or other input tubes you might be familiar with or that I'm familiar with. I won't speak for you. I don't know you. I'll just speak for me and my lack of things I know. So what do we think of this thing? I think it's bloody awesome. This amp is hugely powerful. There's basically nothing it won't power. Like most headphones, like most dynamic headphones, like say ZMF stuff and whatnot, sort of around there. Some like bigger planar stuff's like kind of there. So as far as, sure, it's like there-ish. So you've just got the crazy headroom on this thing. Because hey, guess what? It's also a speaker amp. Yeah, I think it's 8 watts, rated up to like 8 watts, depending on the tube complement you're putting in there. So anyway, definitely an amp that can grow with you as you get different headphones. Like, what's the high level takeaway? Clarity, separation, detail, impact. Great, just all phenomenal. This amp makes every pair of headphones I try on it sound better. If I go from another amp to this amp, the headphones always sound better. It pairs with pretty much everything under the sun. I think for me, the only gotcha in that was the Sesfara was not perfect to my taste, but I think other people might love it. So I'd say this amp drives every headphone phenomenally. And then if you don't think it's perfect to your taste, well, then you get to start rolling tubes, and that's super fun as well. I feel like this, like the sound signature, I was like, how do you explain the sound signature? It's like, it's got great posture, right? You know, when you like meet someone who's just like sits up straight, they stand up straight, maybe they like took ballet when they were a kid or something, and they just like move through space like really gracefully, but with a ton of focus and attention. That's what this amp sounds like to me. It never flinches, but it's not hard, it's not cold. It's just on a mission to deliver sound. And I think, you know, it's like very reasonable to consider this sort of like a reference amp. Like, I love tube and tube-based audio, and I think there are some fair criticisms that sometimes it gets a little warm, a little bloomy, a little crowded. You can't levy any of those criticisms against this amp. It just makes great sound. Very black background. I think the only thing was like maybe the Utopias could pick up the tiniest bit of like noise floor, but like no other headphone that I plugged into this thing gave you any hint of anything except black, black, black backgrounds. You know, compared to other like sort of top of the line headphone, tube driven headphone amps I've tried, like where does this stack up? It's right up there at the top, and then I think it just comes down to preference. Like the Donald North Audio Stratus and the Eddie Kern Aficionado that are 2A3 based are great. They're not as powerful. They couldn't really drive this as far to my satisfaction, but they have a little bit more fluidity, a little bit more of that kind of tubey sound, if you want to go there. So, you know, that's going to be a good match for some headphones and some people's taste, and not for others. Yeah, I did try pairing this with a pair of speakers. They're Klipsch Heresy 3s. It was okay for me. It wasn't great, but I think I've tried another tube amp of about this power rating with them as well. And even though they're really high efficiency, I don't think that one sounded great either. So I'm not going to really count that as a mark against this. Just thought I'd mention it since I did try it. Tubes. Where did I end up? So I ended up, let me grab this guy. I liked these 6L6 GCs, this tongue sole reissue, currently made in Russia. I like these guys. They don't have the impressive stature of the KT88s, but for me, they sort of get to that little bit more warmth and fluidity that I kind of like in a tube sound. So they were the winner for the power tubes. And I tried a handful because honestly, there's a lot of stuff. Like you can run EL34s, KT66, KT60 or 77s, 88s, 6550s, KT9. You just have so many tube rolling options, which is another reason this amp can really like grow with you over time. And sort of mature to match whatever you're listening to. But yeah, you got sort of different things. I think the KT88s are definitely like the tightest and most controlled and cleanest and sharpest, the kind of most solid statey, you might say. The EL34s I thought were very nice, a little smoother, a little fuller, you know, in the low mids and slightly less separation. But the 6L6 GCs, they're just richer, slightly more euphoric, just really an enjoyable tube with this amp. From a input standpoint, I did try some of the new production stuff. None of it really stuck for me. This is a place where like vintage G tubes seem to kind of connect more. This is my personal favorite, the Tongue Sole 6188. I also tried another popular tube in this class, which is the RCA 5691 with the red bass, and that was very good as well, but this to me was better. It had more of what I wanted, so probably a little more fullness, but still some nice sparkle and detail. And then I also tried old Tongue Sole 6SU7GTY, which is very good as well, but this was my pick of the litter of the 6S and 7s that I tried. And then the tube rectifier wise, it's like there's a ton of new stock that's in that 5U4G, 5U4GB category. I, like many foolish people in this hobby, have fallen in love with the Western Electric 422A. This is just gotta be, you know, the best rectifier I've heard. They've gotten really spendy, which is super unfortunate. It's sort of one of the pains of this hobby when like enough attention gets on a tube and then they get scarce and the market blows up. So there are other great new production options which are much more affordable. I will just call out the space here that you have to work with for the rectifier is a little bit limited. So like ELMs like that are like giant, I don't know if they'd actually fit. Somebody's got to try it. I don't know if those would actually fit in there without bumping into one of these transformers. Anyway, I think I'm saying a lot. Did I talk about these? I talked about these really briefly, but I think I was reminded of just this amp is like reinforced just how important impedance matching is. Because on a number of occasions, I would try a pair of headphones. I'd be like, headphones, like, okay, it's not quite as good as I remember. And then I'd like go look up at the spec sheet and be like, oh, right, you know, it's whatever 40 ohms and I'm running it out of the 100 ohm tap, and you move over a tap and you'd be like, oh wow, like whatever like thing, like oh it was too bloomy or it was too like congested or whatever, like that problem would sort of disappear and you'd be like, oh wow, impedance matching. That's some shiz. So yeah, there you go. What's the sum up here? The sum up is this thing's really heavy. It arrives in a giant flight case, which is awesome. The sum up is this is an incredibly versatile, powerful. I think this is like this could be. We always talk about our end game. This could be an end game amp, right? Because you've got more power than you're ever going to need for headphones. You've got impedance matching. You've got a ton of different tubes you can roll. You've got a super black background. It's like there's really no complaints and tons of options. It's very spendy. There's a complaint. It's hugely expensive. Yeah, so there's that. But, you know, I think when you look at other amps in that price range, it's easy to justify the cost of this amp in that category. Hard to justify it in any other, in any other way of looking at it. But that's what this hobby is a dangerous, slippery slope towards bankruptcy. Anyway, I think that's that. There is a brand new version of this, I think, that Justin the Builder just released. Justin the Builder. I don't know what all the differences are. I'm pretty sure he put a switch to switch between headphone and speakers. So if like you wanted to leave it set up all the time for both, you could do that. I don't know what else he did to it, but I'm sure he did great things because he's a tinkerer and he's always kind of improvings. He's always improvings on his own stuff. So yeah, let's call that good. It's a wrap. Maybe somebody can come by and help me move this thing. Anyway, this is Signcraft signing out.